Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Just having trouble finding the link for some reason. Okay, now I just have to pull up the right screen. Bear with me. Okay, so we still have our counselors. We've got our Director of Operations, Director of Community Business Services, Director of Planning, Treasurer, Clerk, CAO. Got a full house other than our Deputy Mayor, who has sent his regrets. He's unable to come tonight. So we'll try to muster through. So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:36. As there any declaration of interest or general nature thereof, please state it now. Seeing none, we'll move on to staff reports. SR-013-21 finance report, rising insurance costs. I'll read the motion and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Whereas the cost of municipal insurance in the province of Ontario has continued to increase, and whereas joint and several liability continues to ask property taxpayers to carry the majority of damage award when a municipality is found at minimum fault, and whereas these increases are unsustainable and unfair and create significant budgetary impacts, and whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario outlined 7 recommendations to address insurance issues, being 1, the provincial government adopt a model of full proportionate liability to replace joint and several liability. 2, implement enhancements to existing limitation period, including the continued applicability of existing 10-day rule on slip and fall cases, given recent judicial interpretations, and whether a one-year limitation period may be beneficial. 3, implement a cap for economic loss awards. 4, increase the catastrophic impairment default benefit limit to $2 million and increase the third-party liability coverage to $2 million in government-regulated automobile insurance plans. Number 5, assess and implement additional measures which would support lower premiums or alternatives to the provision of insurance services by other entities such as nonprofit insurance reciprocals. Number 6, compel the insurance industry to supply all necessary financial evidence, including premiums, claims, and deductible limit changes, which supports its and municipal arguments as to the fiscal impact of joint and several liability. Number 7, establish a provincial and municipal working group to consider the above and put forward recommendations to the Attorney General. Therefore, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that this motion be provided to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Peter Bethnola, I'm not even going to try that again, Minister of Finance, and the Honourable Doug Downey, Attorney General of Ontario, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Jameson and Councillor Fodey. Okay, motion is on the floor. I will entertain discussion on it. Go ahead. There's nobody jumping in on this? Wow. You don't want to talk about insurance? Come on. I'll take Councillor Jameson and then Councillor Mabee, please.
Yeah, to the extent that I know, when we've all read the AMO report, it's pretty shocking. And I think where people may not read and understand that the business of municipalities being targeted as deep pocket payees in disputes that are not necessarily involving the municipalities is a really disturbing situation. It's also interesting to note that the province did move to help car leasing companies and so on with caps and other accommodations. So it's really rather surprising that the municipalities that the province is supposed to be providing stewardship for are being exposed in this way. So the recommendations make sense to me, but also recommendation number 7, I think, is a critical point, and that is the working group, which is the one that will ultimately, in my view, put the pressure on to move this thing along. And I hope we can participate in this, because noting what our CAO has said, that it was 20% increase last year in our insurance and 20% again this year, this is just simply not sustainable. And it's an external threat that we need to push back on with the help of the province. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Mabee, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I'm going to echo a lot of what Councillor Jameson also indicated. The 20% increase year over year is definitely not sustainable. But have we had many claims ourselves, as a question? Is there going to be a time where we can't afford to have insurance on ourselves here? Very happy to see that AMO is checking these costs and getting into it, and possibly be the champion within the province to possibly get the Saskatchewan kind of criteria in place and see if that actually can be helpful to us. But I think there's also another element here, is that the judicial climate itself needs to also change. Some of these claims that they're putting out there, again, no different than the very first one where the McDonald's coffee was spilled on a lady, and here we are now with mitigations on maybe not frivolous things, but things that are very small in comparison to major incidents that really require this type of litigation. So I do hope that perhaps AMO can also maybe attack the judicial side of this to see if there's some sort of leeway in making them more just in their claims and have it more comparable to really what it needs to be. And certainly a cap on the judgments will actually help a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions in regards to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed? And
Brian, were you opposed?
Brian, were you opposed or were you in favor?
You're in favor?
You're in favor, yes.
Sorry, I'm in favor. Sorry, I'm having a coughing fit here, so it's taking me a little bit and getting caught once in a while.
Okay, so the next, and I'm going to try to do better. We actually have somebody on the meeting. We have a participant, so I believe we have an attendee. So if the attendee has questions, I would just ask that you raise your hand and the clerk and I will try to pay attention to that. If otherwise, I might forget to ask for input from the gallery, I should say, not the gallery. So the next item on the agenda is SR-014-21 Finance Report, update on asset management and approval of contract with PSD. So the motion reads that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve staff to enter into an agreement with the Public Sector Digest Inc. PSD to assist with completing an updated asset management plan compliant with the Ontario Regulation 588-17. And that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve funding for this consulting work in the amount of $42,332.16 from the Special Projects Reserve Fund. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Gorrell and Councillor Olkey. Okay, gentlemen, the motion is on the floor. Who would like to go first? Somebody? Anybody? Councillor Fodey, and then Councillor Olkey, and then Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, we know we have to have this asset management plan in place in July, which is now, you can literally count on one hand almost. We did discuss the implementation of hiring an IT person. Obviously, that didn't materialize. I would imagine that would be literally twice the number we're looking at here. But more importantly, I like the idea of this company and their knowledge coming in and taking the information that's provided here with our staff and merely implementing it into place. And is it that simple? Is that really how I'm reading this?
Ms. Tyndall, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Yeah, so the PSD obviously has a wide range of knowledge and experience doing asset management plans. They are who we've purchased our software program for. So when it comes to being able to help us integrate the data that we have into the software that will actually help build the updated plan, they're going to be extremely helpful to provide guidance and a project team that will help guide us through the process, which they've done many of these plans. And help us meet that deadline, which unfortunately we just have not had the focus up till now to be able to spend as much time as was required. It's a great deal of work to meet that regulation.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Kate. Well, with that in mind then, by having them implement this for us, they're going to set the template for the future. For should we hire an IT person or even our own staff, it would be put in place in the way it should be, and it was just a case of us or the staff implementing and updating information from here forward, correct?
Through Your Worship, so we are still trying to recruit a deputy treasurer for position, and so there's a lot of work to do to meet the regulation, but at the same time, we're also still implementing the software, and we're in the middle of implementing a maintenance manager module now. And that implementation will actually be done around the same time that this plan is due. But that's to implement the software itself. In terms of us actually integrating it into our operations and setting up the business processes and getting staff to kind of move over to that software platform and really set up all the scheduling and the work orders and all the stuff that we want to be able to leverage through that software is going to take probably till at least the end of this year. So having that additional deputy treasurer position actually will be key to making sure we can continue to leverage the software, to train staff, to get buy-in and move that project forward. We're also looking at some retirements coming up in our group in the next couple years. So this position is going to be pretty important for us to transition as we try to cover those 2 positions as they retire and make sure we have new staff trained up that can continue to do the work that's required.
Thank you.
Councillor Olkey, I believe, was next, and then Councillor Mabee. Councillor Gorrell, did you have your hand up? Did I miss you? Nope. Okay. Councillor Olkey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, but Ms. Tyndall's explanation covered any question I could ask. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Mabee.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Again, partially already answered about the hiring of the deputy treasurer and how that's actually sitting. I know that there have been some interviews, but just hadn't heard recently how that was going. The sole source is a difficult thing for a lot of people to handle, but if it is the only one that's available and able to do this type of work, then it does make prudence to get it going and have this project underway and finally meeting the provincial standards that have been put upon us. So again, thank you very much for everybody who's been inputting onto this so far and getting it to the point it is. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll just tie a bow on this before I call the vote. And it really comes down to, on Monday when I was at ROMA, in between a speaker coming on, they had these, I guess you would call them commercials. And essentially they were videos done to talk about how the gas tax funds that we received from the province, how they were applied and used, and how they influenced asset management in different municipalities. I believe there was a little video for Bracebridge, Centre Wellington, Loyalist, and the City of Guelph. And my goodness, the cities and the towns and the rural municipalities that have embraced the asset management mindset early on back in 2014, 2016, and that when it first became sort of the rage and everything started to push that way, where they are now, based on these little snippets, these videos, is far ahead of where we are in addressing infrastructure deficits, addressing ongoing needs. You know, I think not knowing is probably the worst part about all of this, is that how good or bad we are situated at this point in time, but having the knowledge is the key to make the decisions going forward. So when I was looking at this report, you know, to me, I know that Kate and the CAO have been looking, and they've put out a call for interest for deputy treasurer, asset management, project managers a couple of times. And really, we just haven't seen the candidate that needs to fit in that role. And just as another aside, county is looking for someone in this role at a considerable decrease in salary compared to what we are paying. So I honestly think that they'll be very challenged to find somebody who will be a good fit for that, because that organization obviously is significantly larger than this. But the moral of the story is that if we put this asset management in place and it's done right up at the front, and I think that's what interests me most about Public Sector Digest, because they're the owners of Citywide. They know the software in and out. They know they're going to come in and work with our team already in place here and coach them through. And then the senior management team is coaching everyone else down the line, and it'll be done right up front. And not to say that there won't be mistakes along the way, but there'll be less chance of it because we have good quarterbacks that are coming from the supplier, in my opinion. But and just further to the potential retirements in the finance department, that's super important that we get the right person in as the deputy treasurer position that will complement this going forward, as well as making sure that we have continuity in that department. So are there any other questions before I call the question? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of this, please signify. All those opposed? Okay. I think Brian was in favor. I think it was just a delay there. It was a very jerky hand. So I'm sure that it was in favor. So thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is SR 015-21 Finance Report, Water Wastewater Financial Plan Approval. I'll read the motion. That the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, Ontario Regulation 453/07 Water and Wastewater Financial Plans prepared by Watson and Associates Economists Limited, dated January 20th, 2021. And that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council direct staff to submit the financial plan dated January 2021. Wow, that's a lot. To the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in accordance with OREG 453/07 Section 316, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council direct the staff to submit the resolution of Council approving the financial plan to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, satisfying the requirements under the Safe Drinking Water Act, SDWA Section 32(5)(2) II. So just before I take questions, this seems to be just a housekeeping issue because we've already talked about the plan, both the Watson and Associates and our financial plan at previous meetings, but this is what the official submission will be going forward. Go ahead, Ms. Westgate.
We just need a mover and a seconder to be able to talk about
Oh,
it.
sorry. Yes, I forgot to ask. A mover and a seconder for the motion so we can talk about it. Councillor Gorrell and Councillor Fodey. Okay. Any questions or comments from the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. Next is SR-016-21 Fire Services Report, Fire Service Review and Community Risk Assessment. So what I might do with this motion, the motion on the agenda is just to receive the information, to receive the report for information, but we were talking about the motion prior to council happening, and that is a little vague for us not to have any sort of direction or impetus to necessarily go forward. So we added a clause which we can add the recommendations 1 through 10. Was there 10 recommendations? I'm trying to remember now. 10?
12.
Yep. 12, sorry, 1 through 12, and then we can work backwards and or some other way, but we can do it that way. So the motion reads that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council receive report SR-016-21 Fire Services Review and Community Risk Assessment, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council approve the following recommendations, 1 through 12. This is just to get it on the floor so that we can talk about it first. It isn't just a blanket approve everything, just so you know. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Okay, Councillor Olkeen. Seconder, Councillor Mabee. Okay. So motion is on the floor in regards to the presentation we heard earlier this evening to discuss what we may like to do, not do, look into further, what have you. So I'll open the floor up. Councillor Jameson, then Councillor Mabee.
Just thank you, Your Worship, through you, just to be clear on the motion that we are going to approve all 12 recommendations, or are we adopting the recommendations for
Further discussion
study by our staff?
Yeah.
Because 12 recommendations, they all look fine to me, but in the course of our pros going through the process may find that, you know, number 8 or number 6 or whatever may not be quite where we're going. But I think on balance, we have very strong set not to minimize the quality of the recommendations, just to make sure we don't find ourselves approving all 12 and then finding down the road we've got some challenges. Otherwise, I certainly think we're ready to go, and so are our residents. Thank you, Your Worship.
So would it be safe to say that you are looking to amend the motion to read that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council adopt and provide further, what's the word I'm looking for? Provide further recommendations to Council to move these these recommendations forward. I'm
Well,
using the word recommendations forward too many times.
Adopt, if I may, adopt the recommendations for consideration by the staff in the development of a fire services plan is how I look at it. But there's
Adopt
the
the
CEO's got his
recommendations.
hand up, so.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, CIO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. One of the things we need to consider as part of adopting recommendations is how we plan to fund them. So I think that's part of a larger conversation that we need. So it's just striking me that we need to move the report along, the review along, so that we can submit it to the province for funding to meet our grant requirements. But I think we need more work on developing an action plan on prioritizing which recommendations are we going to take on first, what's the timeline for those, how are we going to pay for them, and then come back to council seeking approval for all of this stuff. That's my thought as I'm generating it here. I'm
Okay,
very open
I think
to
I got it.
conversations on it. Yeah.
I think I've got it. So the amendment would be to the last part, that the committee of the whole recommends that council adopt 1 through 12 recommendations, provide a prioritization plan with financial considerations for council to review. Would that be correct, Madam Clerk?
Sorry, I missed what you said. Can you say that again?
So the way that I have the amendment written is that, and that committee of the whole recommends that council, and then just remove everything after that part, adopt 1 through 12 recommendations and provide a prioritization plan with financial consideration for council to review. I've got it written out here and it's actually somewhat legible. So I need somebody who's willing to make that amendment, Mr. Jameson, and then I need a seconder on the amendment. Councillor Gorrell, thank you. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call a question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed, and it's carried. Okay, so the amended motion reads that committee of the whole recommends that council receive report number SR-01621 Fire Services Review and Community Risk Assessment, and that the committee of the whole recommends that council adopt 1 through 12 recommendations and provide a prioritization plan with financial considerations for council to review. So now on the amended motion, and is there any further discussion? Was there any other points that you wanted to clarify while we have our Deputy Fire Chief here on the line? Go ahead, Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. By the report, it did say that recommendation number 2 was a priority. So I'm wondering whether, again, we said we're going to go through them and prioritize them anyways. So there's already one there that's in that realm. Being a 288-page report, I did get through it all, so that was quite astounding for me anyways. But certainly there's certain segments of it which I think it needs further discussion, but it was a very good report. And the first time this came to us, we didn't see this much detail in this report, which I'm very pleased to see. Wholeheartedly, it talks about the trucks, some equipment, the buildings, the personnel, how and what is required. There's still some questions there, and also with personnel, what we have and what we need. Also the pay scale that was mentioned before in our meeting. So there's still lots of questions to work on here to make sure that the fire department is adequately funded and got everything, all the tools in their toolbox to use. So I do feel that going through this, prioritizing them, and it's a multi-year program. It's not just this year. So great report. Thank you very much for all that participated in it to get it to where it is. Thank you.
Councillor Gorrell and then the CAO and then Councillor Fodey. And then Councillor.
Thank you. Is my audio, pardon me, is that working?
You're good. Yep, we can hear
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, just a couple of quick questions. One, a while back, we passed something to do with, pardon my vagueness here, implementing a consultant for our training programs. Perhaps the deputy chief could bring that to light again. And secondly, when we talk standard operating guidelines and standard operating procedures in light of risk management, I appreciate that everyone needs to operate under those systems, but in my previous life, Transport Canada would authorize those standard operating procedures, and therefore you must follow them. And they were, you were free to devise whatever operating procedure you wanted, but once it was approved, you owned it. So from a risk management point of view, does anybody approve these things, or are they just things that we accept and so on? And I'm looking at potential litigation in that area. So those are two just quick questions. Thank you.
Deputy Chief, would you like to answer those?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes. So with the online learning platform that we've been looking at, we have started. I've been working with Stillwater Consulting. Some of my training partners in Leeds Fire have been going through it, and we're getting ready, and we're working with the company to actually roll it out so that we can start some online training with our folks. It's unfortunately, like lots of other things, it doesn't just materialize overnight. We've got 80 plus firefighters, so we're trying to roll it out in the very best way we can. But in order to do that, I have to have my instructors up to speed on what they're doing to help roll that out. So we're getting close. So hopefully we'll be looking at that within the next couple of weeks. I have a meeting with my instructors tomorrow night, both for the training center and for our in-house training. So hope to be able to get some more information and out to my firefighters in the next week or so. On the operating procedures, so we're kind of lucky because we have standard operating procedures, but we also have guidelines. So obviously with this job, it's not black or white. There's lots of gray in what we do. So we write the guidelines to a certain standard so that we can have a little bit of our officers on scene and the firefighters on scene have a little bit of variance in how we do things, because everything is not exactly the same on every call. But yes, the standard operating guidelines and procedures are something that we already have in place, but what they need to be is updated. So every time we get a new piece of equipment, a new tanker, a new pump, we have guidelines for those. So some of those have to be updated. Some of the ones that we have, whether that's agreements with other municipalities, whether it how we do certain things, those all have to be updated. So basically, one of the recommendations or one of the ideas through EMT was to have a consultant do it. We're looking at, in the past, what we've done is gone through our officer group and used our officers to do it. And then they're approved by the fire chief. And they follow guidelines based on what our NFPA standards for all of those options are, as well as our Section 21 guidance notes through the province.
So just a quick follow-up. Just a quick follow-up then, Mike, that they followed the guidelines of National Fire. Yes. But do they approve them? Do they turn around and read them all and say, excellent work, you're approved? And therefore, if you went into court and someone said you did or didn't follow an SOP, there's where I'm going with the risk management. I was just curious on how that works. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, there's nobody governing above us, above the fire department that does that. It's based on just standard practice. And to be quite honest, lots of fire departments use similar guidelines so that we're not reinventing the wheel. on our responses and how we get on and off a truck or whatever. And it's based on experience and based on those practices.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now I have the CAO who wanted to get in, and then Councillor Olkey, and then Councillor Fodey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just point of clarification, and I apologize if I missed it. For the development of the priorities on the recommendations, and as well as developing the financial plan to support those recommendations, that would be something that staff can do, the fire staff, with the assistance of the senior team. So I just wasn't sure if that was reflected or not in the amended motion.
It just basically says that they adopt the 1 to 12 recommendations and that council receive the report, and that committee whole recommends that council adopt the recommendations, and that senior management provide a prioritization plan with financial considerations for council to review. Does that make more sense? Sorry.
That does. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, Mike. You wanted to follow up?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, in the summary recommendations, they do have an outline of, actually on page 2, it talks about what the immediate short-term, mid-term, and long-term. So it goes anywhere from 1 year to 10 years. So each recommendation has a suggested timeline, everything from immediate to long-term. So basically that would be how I would look at it. And yes, absolutely, with senior management's help, we'll go through it and figure out what our timelines are and what our financial responsibilities are.
Thank you. Now I have Councillor Olkey and then Councillor Fodey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just generally, I'm having a bit of a spider tingle here. When you look at recommendation 12, I'm wondering if this does not raise some expectations that we'd really have to be rather more specific about, which is Seeley's Bay Fire Station should be updated or relocated, medium term, $2.5 to $3 million. I'm wondering what is actually in the fire reserve for capital, or that could be put against that. And I think that one might raise a lot of expectations and ask a lot of questions, which I don't think I could answer at this point. I agree with it, but there's a little bit of a fuzzy factor around this one, I think. Maybe the amended motion, does provide for that fuzz factor, but I think we might want to just take a second here and think about it. Thank you.
Director Tyndall, do you know what's in fire reserves and capital reserves for buildings? Just to answer the one question that Councillor Olkey had, just in general terms.
Through Your Worship, so just looking at the fire reserve fund schedule that was in the budget, and it's projected to be just over 300,000 at the end of 2021. And I can just find the facility one here quickly in a sec.
I might say that while she's looking for that information, Councillor Olkey, that the amended motion as asking for a prioritization plan through senior management and how that might work with a budget plan that goes along with it. So I think I realize that it's kind of fuzzy, but at the same time, the senior managers are going to come back, the fire chief, the deputy chief, along with the treasurer and the CAO and everyone else adding their 2 cents is probably going to be able to tell us if this is an immediate need, a want. It's something that's been recommended because of deficiencies, lack of people, plus the facility itself, that sort of thing. But I will trust the senior managers to bring back something that's a bit more detailed and timelined, whether it's achievable or not in a short period of time, or if this is a long-term goal. Kate, do you have the information, and then I'll go back to the CAO for clarification before I go to Councillor Fodey.
Through your worship, so the facility reserve fund right now, we're projecting $385,000 at the end of 2021. But that's, again, I haven't done even the 2020 year-end capital entries yet, so those amounts are just ballpark estimates right now.
Okay. Clear as mud, Councillor Oakey?
Well, yes, but the aim has been achieved and that we have thought about it, and it's not a wanton sort of throwaway thing. And so I'm quite happy. Thank you.
CAO, did you want to provide clarification before we move on to Councillor Fodey, please?
Yes, perhaps a way of addressing Councillor Oakey's concern about agreeing to that it be replaced or updated is that council accept or adopt the 12 recommendations in principle. I don't know if that gives us a little more, you know, while we're
amend the amended motion.
Yeah, you know, we like the idea of the Seeley's Bay Fire Hall getting something, but not necessarily, you know, that it's totally rebuilt or relocated or whatever within the midterm, something along those lines. I'm thinking if we can say
In principle.
In principle, yeah.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, how do we do this? If we wanted to add that in behind adopt 1 to 12 recommendations in principle.
So the mover, Councillor Jameson and Councillor Gorrell, are you amenable to that change, that amendment?
Adding in principle, yes. Councillor Jameson, yes.
We also added SMT as well, senior management to provide a recommendation plan.
Okay. Then we're directing what and to whom, and for us to review at the end. Okay, now that we've got those friendly little amendments over with, Councillor Fodey, you've been waiting patiently.
That's okay. My patience has been pretty much resolved. My concern was that we were going to just adopt all 12, but Councillor Oakey has brought this to light. It's been mitigated to my satisfaction that we're not just going to have to be stapled to the wall on these 12 recommendations, where in fact that fire services and staff, and perhaps with the help of council, we can find direction and course for us all to be involved in. But as long as we're not going to be bound tight to these 12 recommendations, I think that's been satisfied. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands, I'll just read the motion, the amended motion again. And the original motion was moved by Councillor Oakey and Councillor Mabee that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council receive report SR-016-21 Fire Services Review and Community Risk Assessment, and that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council, and here's the amendment, adopt 1 to 12 recommendations in principle, and SMT provide a prioritization plan with financial considerations for Council to review. I think that nails it. Councillor Mabee? Councillor Mabee, are you frozen?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry about this.
Okay.
No, you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yep.
I do hope that we have more conversation about this whole situation, because I do have a whole page of questions that I had here, that which I am going to send back to the fire chief and deputy chief and talk to them about it, because most of them might be able to be answered through them with the report. So, but I just wanted to allude to that there are a bunch more questions that I have about this report and going forward, what we need to do. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or concerns before we call the vote? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and it's carried. Thank you. Okay, so I'm off screen now. I've got too many screens up. So I'm going to, we didn't really have much of a break in between the two meetings. And so I'm going to ask for a small break just to refresh and get back, because I have a feeling that we're going to end up with quite a discussion about the road inventory and needs study that's coming forward. And then the rest of the council meeting should be fairly straightforward. So 5-minute break and then back here at, well, by 7:30, and then we'll finish off. Okay, that's 10 minutes. I'll give you 10 minutes so you can make a cup of tea. Okay. Thank you for everybody for indulging me because I didn't get the break in between the two meetings that I needed. I was like, anyway. Okay. Okay, so we're just waiting on Councillor Jameson and Councillor Olkey to come back, and I believe Ms. Tyndall is on the line, even though we can't see her shining face.
I'm here.
Oh, she's here. Okay, that's good. Just to let you know, it's very lonely in this little part of the world with half of the staff not around from time to time. And you know, it's not to say that we don't communicate. I have often have chats via Teams or Zoom or what have you with those who aren't in the office, but it's not quite the same. So looking forward to the lockdown being lifted and us going down to quasi-normal in-person workspace. So we'll just wait for Councillor Jameson and Councillor Olkey to turn their screens back on. I guess we only needed 5 minutes. Okay. Guess we lost Mr. Pryor.
Your worship,
Yep.
I excused DC Pryor since the fire report was done, and
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything left on the docket tonight that is pertaining to him. Just so that everybody's on the same page, we're moving to page 490 of the 503-page document. So that if anybody's looking to find the page we're supposed to be on, I know I don't do that very often. I probably should do that more often than not. So we'll be starting with the roads inventory and needs study. Okay, Councillor Olkey, Councillor Jameson, are you back online? We got Councillor Jameson, there's his shining face. Just waiting for Councillor Olkey. Okay. Councillor Olkey, are we back at your desk? You're just hiding behind the camera? You can tell that I'm super patient tonight. Guess we've only got 2 minutes. I can wait a couple of minutes.
Cold weather making you quicker.
Well, it's definitely been bloody cold. There's no doubt about that. It was
My
beautiful
maple
though
trees
with
are
the
loving
trees.
it.
Yeah, no doubt. The crystals on the trees on Sunday morning, stunning. It was so beautiful. Went for a nice long walk on the parkway along the river,
Yes.
and it was gorgeous, gorgeous morning.
It's been
That's
fun
why we live in the
snowshoeing.
jewel of North America.
It's true. And I'm sure that your hip's holding out okay there, Councillor Jameson, while you're snowshoeing.
I was just gonna say it's been fun snowshoeing for me for the first time in 3 years, but also that it's frozen enough where I am that we can get out on our little bay and on the fields, and with the sun, it's just been so pleasant the last couple of days. So,
yeah,
being the athlete that I am, I'll stop now.
So we have everybody back online now. It is 7:29, and we will move on to operations reports SR-017-21 road inventory and needs study. And I'll put the motion on the floor, and likely we might amend it once we've had our discussion to provide further direction. But the motion reads that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council receive report SR-017-21 road need inventory and needs study for information. Likely we'll want to provide some direction to the director after we've had some discussion, so we can amend the motion at a later in the discussion. Can I have a mover and a seconder so we can talk about it? Councillor Mabee and then Councillor Fodey. Okay, motion is on the floor. Operations, Director of Operations, would you like to preface this with a synopsis before we get into it? And then we can ask the questions. You need to unmute there.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Greer Galloway was engaged to do a road needs analysis for the municipality. That was to come to council for November the 9th. Decided to take that off the agenda and review the results of the road needs analysis. So we decided to go with another route, a meeting between Director Tyndall, myself, and Greer Galloway. We had some concerns with what the road evaluation, the condition ratings were for the road network. So we reviewed that using another format, which I've provided with the report, the evaluation form, and the resultants condition ratings were greatly different than what had been provided. So when Director Tyndall and I had met with Greer Galloway, we basically had a conversation about what we felt the numbers should be and how the results of that seemed to compare to what was in the field. And so as a result, Greer Galloway agreed to do a cost sharing exercise and go out and reevaluate the roads with the manager of operations present in that evaluation as well. James Tuck went with them. So that evaluation took place in December, and the results I've provided as another appendices as well, showing the condition ratings completed from including TLTI staff versus the original. And like I said, you can see a vast difference between the two. So from that, I extracted that information and I applied my methodologies for evaluating the long-term needs or the program going forward. What had been provided it's called a worst first approach. It's allowing roads to degrade to a point where your only option is to rebuild them. And that's not the most cost-effective means for managing the road network. So I've provided some information in the report as well about PPRA, the pavement or roadresource.org. It's the Pavement Preservation and Recycling Alliance website. And with that website, they explain as good as I've ever seen the process of keeping your good roads good. And some of them, you will see that they'll degrade to the point where you have to rebuild them or rehabilitate them. But for the most part, we have a lot of roads that are in really good shape. And the idea is to keep those in really good shape. So within the analysis, I provided a chart or graph of the pavement condition versus the pavement age and applying pavement preservations. You invest $2 when the road is in good shape, and it compares to $12 to $16 when the road's in poor shape. So I use that information along with the CBV value. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it here. It's the cost benefit value. So what that does is it takes the amount of traffic on a road and the technique for whether you rebuild it or you do a preservation, and you divide that by the unit cost and the condition of that road, and it gives you a value of what the best bang for the buck is, what the best impact is on the best value for doing that treatment versus another road. It's a direct comparative analysis of that. So by incorporating that, and I didn't provide the details of all the results of that, but I do have it if you guys would like a copy. By comparing those, I did an analysis of what Gorrell had proposed for replacing like for like, and it came out to $1.47 million per year to do worst first. And the overall condition of the road, the network pavement condition index resultant was negative 2.58%. So we start out right now at a 69.58 out of 100, and investing $1.547 million per year for the next 6 years will be down to 67%. So we're actually losing ground. Then I did do an alternate approach with the network optimization method, and that's incorporating microsurfacing and seal coats, and we still have to do the rehabilitations and the reconstructions when they're due. But by incorporating those additional treatments, we're able to achieve a 72.04% or 2.46% gain on the network PCI by investing a little over $1 million a year. So the savings there is roughly $500,000 per year by replacing like for like. And then additionally, looking at some big projects, hadn't included bridges. That wasn't part of their scope, but for us as a municipality, it is part of our scope. So I included the bridge that was due to be replaced on Kidd Road North. And I also included the village of Lansdowne for upgrades. That's storm sewers, curb and gutter, sidewalks, all of those treatments that needed to be done. And those two major projects combined account for roughly just over $3 million. So at the end of all of this, we're going to spend, like if we were to incorporate Lansdowne Village and the bridge and this network optimization, we'd spend $1.564 million per year, or $17,000 a year more than what Gorrell was proposing. We'd be enhancing our network by incorporating the sidewalks and the curbs in the village of Lansdowne, and the increase of 2.46% to our network pavement condition index. Additionally, so I had extracted from Gorrell that they had included gravel roads and a condition rating for gravel roads. And I know this is a big thing here. The gravel roads condition that they provided is basically, it would last for 3 years. We resurface the roads every 3 years. So if it's a good road today, in 3 years, it's going to be a poor road. And that's due to many factors, lack of drainage and the fact that we only put gravel on the road every 3 years. So for me, the condition rating of those gravel roads was superficial, because what is a good road today will not be tomorrow, sort of thing. That's what I'm trying to get across. So from that, I look at it a different way, that we need to look at the traffic counts. So some of these roads should be upgraded. They see enough traffic and they warrant having a surface on them. They all require drainage, obviously, but some of these roads definitely require a hard surface. So the best way, in my opinion, to do that is to look at the traffic counts. And we create a hierarchy of the roads based on their traffic counts. If it has a higher traffic volume than a dead end road, a straight through road that links to county roads, is going to see more traffic and will require an upgrade before a dead end road that only sees 2 to 3 cars a day. That's how I look at it personally, and I'm obviously just giving you my opinion. So for me, I think the priority for the gravel roads at this time is to establish traffic counts. We do not have any good data for what the traffic counts are on any of our roads. But I think the priority rate now should be on the gravel roads, so that we're investing the money in the gravel roads on the right segments. So that is my whole report, sort of high level. I provided a draft multi-year, 6-year plan. I'm not looking for approval of the whole 6 years. We've approved the 2021 budget, so I provided the road segments that would fit within that 21 budget, but I wanted to give you a picture of what the next 5 years after that would look like. And that's it.
Okay, so Councillor Mabee, then Councillor Olkey, and then Councillor Gorrell. Go ahead, Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, and to Director Halliday. So the traffic count, I know that's a high thing, and I've actually asked for it on Abrams Road. And even though it's a dead end road, it's a busy road because of a business on it. So I would like to see that counter put on that one as soon as possible, or as soon as the weather permits, so that we can actually prove that road was rebuilt there 2 years ago. But with the number of traffic, or the amount of traffic on it, it's getting worn down already. And certainly having the roads upgraded, hard surface, I'm a proponent for hard surface, always has been, because again, some of our roads do get a lot of wear and tear that are gravel, and we can save the gravel costs, the grading costs, just the distance from the yard to get there, to grade them more often. There's a lot of pluses to the hard surfaces. And over in Europe, particularly England, because I've been there many times, and almost every road out there is a hard surface. So they mitigate this grading issue. The other thing is that I'm glad to see that in the document it actually indicates about drainage, because the last time we heard anything about this, that was my biggest question, is that they didn't include drainage, because that is, whether it be a culvert, a ditch, a bridge, anything, if the water can't get away from the roadway, as we all know, it deteriorates the base. And if you don't have a good base, good foundation, nothing's standing up. So we need to make sure that we have the drainage going in the right direction. Also with the Greer-Galloway, your numbers opposed to theirs, and how often your numbers rated the road lower in condition, which I found very interesting. But also how many roads Greer-Galloway perhaps missed out of the report also, which if my memory is with me, I thought they'd already done this report once before, or at least once before. So why there were roads missing kind of surprises me. So I'm wondering how that all worked out. I'm just reading my lower, and with this actual report that you have, how does it probably fits a lot better into the asset management plan that we have proposed here to get us into this next segment with provincial guidelines also. So I'm glad to see that this particular report, and maybe your calculations on how you're getting to the actual standards of the road is a lot better, and gives us a clearer picture on how we're going to get there, as well as the 6-year plan, how it's going to work out. It's a pretty daunting challenge, though, no matter how you cut the cake, and our tax dollars are going to be hard at work to make this all happen, and get our roads up to a standard that which is very much required by all the citizens to have. Thank you.
Director, do you want to answer those questions?
Yep, I think the question about Abrams Road, certainly our goal is to do traffic counts on all of the roads, but certainly the gravel roads would be our priority. So that's one that will definitely be on the list. My hope is to get all of the gravel roads completed this year. Now we can't do any traffic counts right now because we put the tubes down and the plows will take them off. But as soon as we're done winter control, then that's a priority for us to get those traffic counters out there. And drainage, yes, Greer Galloway, the rates that they had provided for resurfacing of the hard surface roads, there was a differential between the costs that I have included for the hard surface roads for rehabilitation and upgrades than what they had provided for that, because drainage is a major concern for me as well. There are three major factors to consider for your roads. It's drainage, drainage, and drainage. That's what makes your road last. So it's a factor. It's a major factor. It's included in our costs for upgrading the roads and rehabilitating the roads, and it will be going forward. I think that was all the questions.
Okay. And just, I think the only thing that I would add, because I've had many conversations with the director in regards to this report, keep in mind that the former director began the process, and it didn't seem that the first draft of the plan, there was much involvement with our staff because we were without a director of operations, and the road super at the time was not engaged in the first pass through, which is probably why there was a couple of sections missed, or 3 sections missed. But this time with the director at hand, spot checking, and when we basically had the first draft of it, we said, this doesn't feel right. It's not quite, the numbers don't seem to jive based on what we kind of know just as people driving these roads. So I'm really glad that we had the sober second thought and we went back and redid the scoring system, mainly because it does inform our asset management plan and how we move forward with keeping up our road network. So I thank all the staff members for their hard work, and thank you to Kate, who was the one trying to carry the ball for the former director of operations to try to get this done, and now Dave trying to pin the bow on the final part of it. So I have Councillor Olkey and then Councillor Gorrell. Councillor Olkey.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I'd like to say this took me back to some nightmare days on the technical staff course and learning about operational research. And I think as a team project, you're probably going to get an A+. And my directing staff were not generous, but I think it's an A+ report. Just some specifics. Thoughts about hard surfacing the roads. I agree with it. What about paving shoulders? That's a minor technical thing, but it's something you hear about a lot, and I don't remember it from the report. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director.
Paving shoulders, sorry, through you, Your Worship. Do you mean paving shoulders like they do on county roads? Okay. The challenge with trying to pave shoulders on the local roads is that we don't have the right of way in order to fit the ditches. Typical road right of way is 66 feet, but a lot of our roads are forced roads as well. So there are locations where we will go from 66 feet down to 35 feet and back out to 66 feet again. It all depends on severances on the road section and whether we're following the old road system that was allotted for, and concessions and those types of things. So you see it on a lot of county roads. Something that I've been privy to is widening the surface and allowing for more of a gravel shoulder as well. So with the surface treated roads, you spray it a little bit wider. You allow for a little bit of a gravel shoulder as well to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians and those types of things. So that's certainly something that we can consider, but then we will find some challenges for consistency on some of the roads because some of them are forest roads.
Just to follow up a bit, sorry, Your Worship, to follow up a bit. There is some pressure from the biking community about it, of course, and there's some folklore about it's entirely doable and everything. So thank you for that clarification.
Recognize then Councillor Gorrell, and then Councillor Mabee, I'll let you back here.
Thank you, Your Worship. David, is we're talking traffic counts on gravel roads to establish priorities. Just anecdotally, when my gravel road was paved, because people were avoiding it, it was in rough shape, but you hard surface that and all of a sudden it's become quite a thoroughfare. So the traffic counts, are there other alternatives that you can mix in there with traffic counts? In other words, does a road connect anything and so on? Because just a raw traffic count, sometimes you'd be hard pressed on some of these roads. They get in pretty rough shape and people like myself will avoid them. So I just wondered, that's first question. And number two, if we go with strict traffic counts, how do we continue to deal back in the gravel? Because a lot of complaints, as you can well imagine, flow through gravel roads in the tweener seasons. How do we assess the work that is going to be done? I constantly, if there's one thing I hear always, it's how come they put windrows at the side of a gravel road to trap the water? I hear that over and over, and I'm sure every councillor in this table hears the same thing. So how do you assess then what work is going to get done on those gravel roads, which seems to be rather critical in our township? So those are just two questions. Thank you.
Director?
Through your worship. So there are other factors for upgrading that were considered in the report. You look, like you said, of connecting roads between, if they're leading from one road to another road versus a dead end, it typically has lower traffic. You look at the use of the road itself as well. Do we have businesses on that road? Do we have a farming community that needs a wider platform as well? You look at what are the seasonal resident uses? So typically gravel roads we try to do in the summertime, because you won't pick up the peak traffic in the wintertime or in the fall, the shoulder seasons. So gravel roads you try to shoot for after the first long weekend towards the end of the summer, and that's the summer average daily traffic, and that gives you a good indication of how many people are using it in its busy season. So that's some of the factors. Another one Councillor Mabee actually touched on that I hadn't put in the report, but it was a good factor, is the distance for, and if the road is by itself and farthest away from the patrol yards for grading, it's a factor as well, because if you have to go all the way out to pick up one road, it's not effective. It's not efficient to run all the way out there to pick up that one road. So you have to consider that as well, that it doesn't make sense to run a grader all the way out there to pick that one up. So those are some of the factors for upgrading. In terms of the other gravel roads, I think in conjunction with this, something we need to consider, and it will be in our operations budget going forward, is ditching. We need to ditch these roads. The gravel roads that don't make this list, they need those other operational factors. We need to ditch these roads and get the drainage happening. It'll set us up for the future for upgrading them. It'll be more cost effective to upgrade them at that time, and it will make them last longer. We won't lose the granular that we are now. We won't have the windrows on the side, and it won't become a bowl, which the roads seem to capture all the drainage. So that's some of the additional work that needs to be completed in order to extend the life of these roads.
Just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
Is the process of grading, I'm thinking grade all type equipment, is that something that we would want to do in-house, or is that something best left out to contractors? Thank you.
I think it's a mix. Sorry, through your worship. It's a mix. Our guys, they're fantastic. They're able to do a whole bunch of things, but we have a finite amount of resources in-house. So I think it's a mixture of we do what we can with our equipment, and then we contract some out at the same time. And you have that competitiveness at the same time as well, because you're comparing how the contractors are doing it versus how we're doing it, and you're able to see how those two processes work and what works and what doesn't work, and those types of factors.
Super, thank you.
Okay, I'll recognize Councillor Fodey and then back to Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our Director of Operations. I'll concur with Councillor Oakey. It's an excellent report. It's well done. It's well presented. A couple of statements and questions on the gravel road and your traffic count. you had mentioned that some of the gravel roads are only 1 and 2. That's at the very end of the gravel road. I live on a gravel road that'll be 1 to 2 at the very end. At the outer end, or the exit or entrance, if you will, those numbers, you know, they go up tenfold. And I think Councillor Oakey could agree to that. He lives on a similar road. But one thing that caught my attention here on your redo of the Village of Lansdowne, how does water and sewer tap into this? Because I, for one, would be real reluctant to do all this impressive work on the Village of Lansdowne if we weren't going to take care of the water and sewer first, or we were assured that the water and sewer wasn't going to be needing to be touched for several years after this was done.
Your worship. So with Lansdowne, I think we're in a place. Aqua is telling us that we have 80 year of lifespan from new construct until the end of life. So we're still in a good place right now where we can rehabilitate the village and get that 30 years out of it before we have to do anything else. The worst thing we could do is pave a new road and then have to cut it. Now, obviously, there may be some services or whatever that we have to look into, and we would definitely be working with Aqua to make sure that any factors that need to be taken into consideration for the rehabilitation or upgrade of Lansdowne would be taken into consideration. We would factor that in for sure.
Okay, thank you. With regards to the Kidd Road Bridge, what is the lifespan on that? I didn't realize that was a priority right now.
Based on the OSIM inspection that I've received from TSI, it looks like it's something that should have been included in the 2021 budget. They were recommending it. It doesn't look like it's going to collapse or anything like that, but it does have a poor rating. So it's something that definitely needs to be factored in within the next 5 years.
Okay, so that'd be similar to what happened on Reynolds Road North this year, the Wilson Creek Bridge.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I think that's it. I'm impressed the fact you even use the word drainage on the report. I think you have your work cut out for you in this township. You'll be hard pressed to find any road that's seen any drainage in decades. And I stand behind that. I mean, this township doesn't know what ditching looks like, and it hasn't for term after term after term of previous councils. And whether they like it or not, they can wear that statement. But the fact is that I agree wholeheartedly with you. If you haven't got drainage, you don't have to worry about your road. You won't have that before long either. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Terry.
Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. A couple other points that came up. One is about the bicycle paths, and I think there is a bylaw that might actually indicate that there is to be wider shoulders. But again, that comes down to actually having to reconstruct the whole roadway, actually give it the base, to give it a bicycle pathway. So the width does count on what we can get from the property that it might be adjacent to. So a bike path is definitely something that, or mitigation of people even walking down the side of the road, because as even during this pandemic time, there's a lot more people out walking the roads than there ever were before. So being safe and off out of the way of traffic is important. And then one other point that I forgot about earlier, and particularly on my road, I've seen it, is the cutting of the grass at the side. And I know that we have bought new equipment to actually look after that. Because it comes down to the road maintenance and also the ditching, and with the deeper ditches, the invasive plants do get into the ditch and the side, and to get it cut away, and with the new equipment that I thought we had bought, it was going to have a 4 or 5 foot range, and I know my road here the last 2 years running has only had about 1.5 foot cut at the edge, and now the plants are starting to grow up and be a little taller in the further afield into the ditch and beyond. So with the invasive plants, as I've said, being a problem within our community, I think we need to look at that plan and see if we can catch up to that and make it look a little better, even though the residents who have property at the ditch do usually cut it and look after it there, but it's elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything more, Dave, or Are you good? Okay.
No, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So the cutting of the grass, I do know that last year we have two grass cutting machines. One of them was broke down basically for the entire summer. So that one was out of use. The brush head that we have in-house has been utilized as the secondary mowing machine. So when the big mower was down, they were using the brush head for that purpose to try to mow the grass. And it's not meant for that purpose. It's hard on the brush head as well. And we're looking to replace that brush head this year because it is, at the end of its life cycle and due for replacement. I know that an amount of money had been included in the capital budget for 2021 for a front mower on the machine with the brush head. But we're reviewing that because operationally the operator he's not sure if that's the right use of that piece of equipment, because if we focus then on just mowing, we'll fall off behind on brushing. So we are looking into alternative methods of achieving that. I've reached out to a supplier that rents machines. We don't need a machine for 12 months of the year, so it might make more sense to rent one for a month or 2 months to get us over the initial mow, and then we can maintain it with our one mower thereafter. So we are looking at those things, and before we do anything like that, we'll be coming back to you guys and letting you know about it.
Okay, Councillor Fodey, and then I'll make some comments and then I'll propose an amendment here that may be worthwhile here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, with regards to paved shoulders, I mean, you've championed that through the county, and the county has reciprocated in making it standard procedure that every road they redo from now on will have paved shoulders. Our whole township is integrated with a lot of county roads. I would be very comfortable in letting the county pick up the tab for all the paved shoulders that this township requires for the interim, because quite frankly, we're not going to have the money to pave any of our shoulders. It's going to take the county a long time to get all these roads redone over a period of time, but they will get there. And I mean, we're looking at resources here tonight on fire services. I mean, our wish list looks like something that the Tooth Fairy would have dropped off. But the reality is our taxpayers are quite likely not wanting to pick up the fairy dust and make us answer to it in the end. But I would be very comfortable that the county is now mandated to do shoulders every time they redo a road. I'm very comfortable letting that follow its course, and we sit back and spend our money elsewhere. Thank you.
Just to add to the comment about the paved shoulders in county, the director and I have talked a lot about roads, and I'm grateful for the knowledge that I never knew I needed, that I desperately needed to inform myself about county road networks and this going through the exercise of this condition assessment, and maybe because the director's office is kitty corner to mine, I end up hearing a lot more, and I ask a lot of questions because I'm certainly not unintelligent by any stretch of the imagination, but this isn't my forte. So I'm asking questions about it to really understand. But to me, it was very simple. Once we had the condition assessment done, and keep in mind, this is just the hard surface roads, that the next condition assessment is going to come on the gravel roads once we have the traffic counts. But, when you're talking about replacing and redoing the streets of Lansdowne, and some people would be like, well, it's just the village of Lansdowne. How much traffic do they actually get? But there's so many other things that are attached to that. And that is beautification. It sounds trite, but if somebody's rolling through Lansdowne thinking, well, this is this village isn't in such great repair, I would never want to work here, or I wouldn't want to live here. But if we had proper roads, proper storm sewers, proper curbing, proper sidewalks, all of that kind of stuff as things go on, it makes it a lot easier to sell the village of Lansdowne, for example. And same would go with Lyndhurst and Seeley's Bay. But they sort of get to be the second cousins removed because larger road networks need more attention. But this roads needs analysis, to me, once it was finalized, it was just to me it was a simple roadmap. It showed that these are the roads that need it first, and we need a plan going forward. What impressed me most is the fact that the roads needs came to us. but there's a potential plan there attached to it. So it isn't just a report that's going to sit on the shelf, which is leading me to the next part. So I've formulated a potential amendment if somebody is willing to move it and second it. So the amendment, because the original motion was to read that the committee of the whole recommends that council receive the report SR-017-21 road inventory and needs study for information. But I would suggest that the amendment would remove for information and say approve and request the director of operations provide as part of annual budget recommendations for road improvements and corresponding budget to be brought forward for review and approval by council. So that amendment gives very clear direction to go along with this report to say, you know, this is a first great 6-year plan, but that if we prove this in principle, obviously future councils have the jurisdiction to change their minds about that, but we have a plan, and that feeds into asset management, and that shows that we aren't just reacting, that we're planning well in advance. So if anybody would like to amend it or change it, I'm open. That was just the suggestion I had, because it actually makes us do something with this rather than just receive the information. Does somebody want to approve or amend the motion as suggested? Do you want me to read it again? Okay. So the main motion was that committee of the whole recommends that council receive report SR-1017-21 road inventory and needs study for information. My proposed amendment would be remove for information and say approve and request the director of operations provide as part of annual budget recommendations for road improvements and corresponding budget to be brought forward for review and approval by council. So essentially it's asking to come forward. So Councillor Fodey, can I have a seconder for the amendment? Fodey and Jameson. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jameson, go ahead.
I just want to make sure, I mean, I understand the amendment, I support thing, and I really appreciate the report, the effort that's gone into also the analysis that our directors brought to it. My understanding is that at some point this all integrates into an asset management plan. And councillors have pointed out, and Councillor Fodey in particular, that, you know, the tooth fairy is going to have to come around and leave something more than $1 to get all this done. But the asset management plan, as I understand it, would help us understand that within these needs, that we don't get siloed into just going down the road with roads, if you will, or, you know, other aspects of the buildings and everything else. That the asset management plan, from the way I read it, is designed to help us prioritize everything in the same context, because it seems to me we're facing some years of potential borrowing just to get the minimum done, let alone some of the big shiny things we'd like to do. So you have fire service, you have roads, you have all these various considerations. And I, for one, am hoping I'm right, that we're looking at the asset management plan as the cohesion of all the priorities so that they all come in line. And so I support the amendment, but I'm hoping we're right about the context. Thank you. Or hoping I'm right. Thank you.
Director, you want to speak to that?
Yes, you're through your worship. Councillor Jameson, you hit the nail on the head. There are going to be a lot of competing efforts for money moving forward. Every department will have their own needs, and the asset management plan will bring everything together. Include on top of this, we're undertaking a building condition assessment this year of all of our facilities. You know, they will have their needs, and the value of how much we have to invest may exceed what we're comfortable in paying. But what the asset management plan will do, it will provide us with a level of risk, and how much risk are you comfortable with assuming, establishing levels of service with one asset versus another, and then pulling it together with that risk. So something may have a high level of service where we establish we want to maintain a 70 OCI of all the roads, but roads themselves actually have a lower risk than, say, the municipal water would, because the potential for hazard, the consequence and potential for risk is a lot higher with water than it is with roads, because you can drive another road, but you don't have an alternate source for water, as an example. So the asset management plan brings all of this information together where you can make an informed decision based on that.
So I'll read the amendment to be added at the end of the original motion, which is approve and request the Director of Operations provide as part of annual budget recommendations for road improvements and corresponding budget to be brought forward for review and approval by council. All those in favor of the motion at hand, or the amendment at hand, I should say. All those opposed, and that's carried. So the amended motion reads that Committee of the Whole recommends that council receive report SR-017-21 road inventory and needs study, and approve and request the Director of Operations to provide as part of annual budget recommendations for road improvements and corresponding budget to be brought forward for review and approval by council. All those in favor of the motion, amended motion, please signify. All those opposed, and the motion is carried. Thank you for your efforts, Director Holiday. Just to provide a little context, and maybe it's out of line in the grand scheme of things, but we've been having discussions about the county status. And for example, we've been asked to borrow 3.2 million for one of the roads that's in desperate need of repair. And there's some hesitation about that. But I believe that, hopefully I'm not telling tales out of school, but one of the county employees indicated that perhaps the need is about 14 million a year and their budget's 6 million. So, you know, we can't stick our head in the sand, avoiding it. And you know, my livelihood is based on borrowing, but you know, sometimes you have to do this to get things back on track. I'm not advocating right now, we don't have a plan or anything in front of us, but if the time comes and we are proposed with that, I would hope that council would see it with an open mind to realize what may need to be done. And the only real positive thing in all of that right at the moment is the interest rates are so ridiculously low. It wouldn't be as painful to borrow now as it would have been back in 1982, for example. So, you know, 22% interest rates. Okay, so next on the agenda, sorry, wrong screen, is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Go ahead, Councillor Gorrell.
Just a question, did we send a letter to the Transport Minister regarding helipads? Did we ever receive an answer back or any information on that, or did CRCA for that matter? Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did we hesitate on that because there was a cabinet shuffle and we're going to send it to the new cabinet minister? Because I think there was a change just recently. Anyways, I thank you for bringing that up. We can follow up. Do you remember if we sent it? I'm trying to remember if I signed it.
I think we sent it.
I think we did.
I think we developed it with the CAO and we sent it, yeah.
Right.
But I haven't heard anything back unless the CAO or the Director of Planning has.
No, so perhaps we should follow up, or even better, send it on to the newly minted Transport Minister. Because, you know, otherwise it'll just get shuffled down a desk. Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Gorrell. Councillor Fodey, you have an unfinished business or other business, unfinished business, either or? There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Through your worship, to our operations director of operations. Sorry, David. Is there any update on the Seeley's Bay Fire Hall septic tank? We've talked about that a while back. Just wondering what the current status is.
Through your worship, I met with Thousand Island Septic on site. We had a look at the situation. They feel that the tank is failing, the septic tank out back. We also, just having a chat with the fire department, have found that the wash bay, the water from the wash bay has been going into the septic tank as well. So when they wash outside in the summertime, it's not as much flow going into the tank. But then when they move into the colder season and start washing the trucks inside, and obviously that contributes to the amount of water that's going into the tanks. They also indicated that the tanks that we have there are undersized and need to be significantly larger for the occupancy that the facility can host. I think it's 250, and they recommended that it needs to be, I want to say it was 3 times the size of what it is. Based on that, they recommend that the most cost-effective method would be to go with a tile bed, a tank leading into a tile bed, and redirecting the amount of flow coming from the wash bay out, because you don't really want to have the gray water going into your tile bed as well. So those are what we've looked at so far. They were going to provide me with a quote for what the cost of what they're proposing was, and then depending on the cost, I'd know what avenue I have to go down for pricing a tile bed, whether it has to be quotes to fall in line with our procurement or if it has to be a tender. So that's where we stand right now.
Okay, thank
Councillor
you.
Jameson. Sorry, go ahead. Follow up, Councillor Fodey.
Thank you. So assuming from that statement, there is a land base for a tile or weeping bed then?
They think that we can fit it off the east side of the parking lot. We own the land from the back of the parking lot right to the next road, which I think is Helen. I could be mistaken.
Yep.
So right from the parking lot to Helen, we have some green space, and they feel that there's enough room for us to fit a tile bed in there. And then we'd have to put a pumping chamber to get it from the tank up into the tile bed, but they don't think that'd be an issue.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Worshipman, to you. For other business, I was just wondering if there's any update from the IJC and the water levels. I know I see it every day at my site, and that the water levels are very low at that area, but wondering if the upflow or upper lakes have any control points, or whether they're higher, lower, what their expected level is, because I know we've had some significant snow level in the northern part of the province of Ontario, let alone around the Great Lake Basin, with exception to ourselves. And I'm not wishing for snow, just to let you know. But we certainly have had a lot of frozen white snow water landing everywhere else. So just wondering if there's any update from that particular group. Thank you.
I'm trying to think if there's anything specific. Madam Planner, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, through your worship. There were some sessions before Christmas with a committee that they had formed. The committee's called the GLAM Committee, Great Lakes. I don't remember that one. So they're looking at the impacts that have occurred in a lot of the municipalities that abut the St. Lawrence River and the Great Lakes system. We haven't heard anything from them since before Christmas, but they took a lot of information in from the municipalities and have indicated that they will be reporting back to us. So when I get an update, I will provide the information to council.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, I'll end, and then Director Holiday.
If you don't, I just wanted to go back to the Seeley's Bay septic tank, my favorite subjects, septic tanks. You said something about the capacity needed to be much greater than it is. And I'm assuming that's in reference to the use in the existing hall as opposed to the fire hall. And the reason I asked this question is because, you know, we had a long discussion and we've been reading an awful lot about the future of the fire hall. So presumably one can move ahead when the money allows us to do so, but we're doing it in a way that doesn't offer more capacity to the fire station in the event that we move it. So I'm going with the understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the septic tank capacity needs to accommodate the uses of the hall. Thank you, Your Worship.
Director Holiday.
Through your worship, the driving factor for the size of the tank is the community center. They look at the amount of appliances, toilets and sinks and all those types of things that contribute to how much flow is required or how much capacity is required in the tank to accommodate that. But the big driving factor is the 250-person occupancy of the community hall upstairs. So if we change the size or the use of the fire hall, then it wouldn't change much because it is still a community center that is that driving factor. Can I just add something?
Look forward to.
Can I just add something to what Marnie had touched on about GLAM? I don't know if this is the right spot to talk about the NDMP email that I received today that I forwarded through. No? Okay. All right.
Sorry, I don't think so. What I did want to say earlier though is that I would expect that long before we make a decision on the septic issue, that the options would be brought forward to council to move forward. I know there was a preliminary recommendation, and with the new quotes and stuff, and with the discussion that we had tonight, you know, there's a lot of overreaching factors. Obviously something needs to be done. I'm certainly not shirking away from that, but I want to make sure that we're not throwing good money after bad, or we're putting it in to service what the needs are now versus future, or not now and for future. All of those things that would come in a report. So is there any other business? Any other business? Okay, any notices of motion? No notices of motion. Councillor Mabee? Yep.
There was to be a notice of motion put forward about the stoplight at the 401, potentially to send a letter to the province to get more action on that. So maybe for next meeting we can have that.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, David, this might be your wheelhouse, but we wanted to first collect data from the fire department and from the operations department before that is coming back to council.
Okay, yeah, didn't know where that stood. Thank you.
Director Holiday?
I have reached out to the OPP, and they're looking at getting the data. It comes through Smiths Falls. So they're reaching out to Smiths Falls to get the data, not only for that location, but also for the locations on Highway 15 as well, for illumination.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is the mayor's update. I will be as brief as possible. ROMA was last Monday and Tuesday. There was further funding allowed or offered by Minister Clark in regards to municipal modernization. I had a discussion with senior management here about the money that we still have in coffers that we haven't allocated for municipal modernization, and so I do believe that they will be coming forward with a report with possible opportunities. Not to say that we wouldn't necessarily ask for further funding, but if we haven't used what we've already got, it's a little harder to ask for more. So, you know, and certainly not just to spend it for the sake of spending it, but on things that we definitely need that we've put off. It was a good conference. It's always difficult on, you know, on the Muppet Show, as you will, all of us in their little respective squares. But like I said about the asset management, it was really interesting to see what other municipalities have done when it came to asset management and how important it is, and those municipalities who adopted it early and where they're at, and it is leaps and bounds. So, and we're lucky because Kate, and I guess maybe that's probably one of the driving factors for Kate, other than the fact that we have the regulation we have to meet July 1st. But coming from the township of Loyalist, they had adopted this earlier than we have. So she already was in that mindset. So hopefully we can find her pair for the deputy treasurer so that they can link arms and move this forward down the track. And get us where we need to be for the long term. The month of January was insane, the number of meetings that I had. I thought December was a crazy month, but January put it to shame. So we're still moving ahead with CAO selection for the county right now. We have some interviews happening this week. We are also moving forward with the reconstruction of Mapleview Lodge, and I'm part of that committee now. And we're having another special meeting of council. We didn't get through budget. And as I indicated before, you know, I'm really taking a close look at how we're spending our money at county, and you know, the lack of oversight. It seems that things have really let go. So when you look at Dave's report, when you're talking about the little things that we can do to prolong the life, you know, there's a piece of road that Dave shared up near Westport that shared with our municipality, with the counties. And what I believe, Dave, you said it was 10 years ago, it was slated for replacement, and it's still not been replaced, that section of road that belongs to the county. And that kind of stuff worries me as a larger picture, because if that's just one section of road, and I realize that doesn't always necessarily speak to the greater picture, but I know of even the west side of Gananoque, Highway 2 is terrible right now. And it's all just patching, and you know, and as soon as the plow goes by, it pulls up the patching and that sort of thing. And that's not a long-term solution. And we have a huge county network within our own boundaries, not to mention connecting us to all the rest of the municipalities, that it is important to maintain. So I'm hopeful that Director Kester will step up and make a strong statement to say we need to fix this, and we can't do it. We can't just keep skimping on the costs. It needs to be done right. We had good reserves at county, which is great, but we don't tend to like to spend it at all there. So anyways, I think there's a happy medium to be found. And other than that, there's the Mayor's Breakfast, which is the Chamber of Commerce is doing an online Mayor's Breakfast on Monday, February the 8th. Sorry. Then I guess that's basically it for my schedule, other than county council later on and special council meetings. So lots of great things happening with local businesses despite the lockdown. It's great to see Seeley's Bay and their snow sculptures and the things that they're doing to get people out and about. And I appreciate all of those people that are doing the best that they can, making the best of this situation and finding some happiness and joy outside in the snow and the sunshine. You know, when it's all that you have, you make the best of it. So I'm glad to see that our residents are doing that. Anything else that I've missed, gentlemen, before we go in camera? Go ahead, Councillor Oki. There we go.
I think it's an important announcement in the vein that things becoming available in the township, but beer and wine are now for sale, and some spirits in the village of Lyndhurst, which I don't believe has happened before. And it's through Wings Live Bait and Tackle, which really is much more of a general store than people think it is. But anyway, if you're cruising that area and feel like stocking up, there you go. Thank you.
Great reminder. Seeing no other comments, then I will ask for a mover and seconder that Committee of the Whole adjourn to form in camera to consider personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, as it relates to human resources. Councillor Oki and Councillor Mabee. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed? And it's carried. Thank you, everyone. So we'll wait for the clerk to kick everyone else out, and then we will and shut off the live stream, and then we will go in